Hello, my name is Trish and welcome to my video channel, Les Artistes, where we're going to be learning about painting with a masking today that's pretty inexpensive, and I thought it would be fun to show you how it works. So what I've done first of all is chosen a simple painting with a sailboat on a lake. And what we're using for our masking is an inexpensive shelving paper. You can get it at any hardware store. And what we do is we cut out the pieces that are going to go onto our painting, and we call it masking, and we place them across here so that when we remove the masking, you can actually reveal the portions individually that you're going to paint one by one without covering the rest of the area. Usually you'd use an expensive masking, it's called liquid masking, and it comes in a bottle, but this has a very low tack rate so that when you peel it up, it doesn't tear the paper away. And some masking, if it's a little older and you don't use it up as quickly as you can, actually leaves a little gum on the bottom, and it could yellow and kind of stain the paper, so it doesn't give you the right color that you want, with pure white like it is. The next thing to talk about is, your selection of paper. So I'm using a tablet that's very inexpensive for my students when they're first learning, because then they can practice without feeling like they're spending a lot of money to do that. It's about 90 weight, and it's called Creatology, and you can actually get this at Michael's or any regular craft store. Using a more expensive paper, I use Strathmore at about 140 pound or better, and I even buy larger sheets, in my favorite art stores like Blick. And the different kinds of supplies that you'll need, of course, will be a pair of scissors so that you can cut your masking into the shapes that you want to reflect the picture that you're going to make. And you're going to want some different brushes. So I've chosen a very soft brush because it covers a lot of area and it's easy to use, and I like this one, it's fluffy. You can also use a sponge like this because it also covers large areas. And you're going to want a liner brush, which is called a rigger. And the liner is for painting small details, like if I need fine lines on my painting. The paints that I use, and it doesn't matter what, with a student, I can choose the most inexpensive palette, or I can use liquid paints. They're just as fun as a watercolor palette. And when I get to be a great painter, sometimes I use my very expensive paints from Windsor or any of the others that are tube paints, and then they have magnificent results. You're going to want something to put the water in, and I like this one because it actually has ridges in the bottom that are variegated, so when I rub my brush along the bottom, it takes the paint off easily. And then it also has these wells here that track the brush so that bristles don't go all the way to the bottom and smash in the water, and I love that. It holds them up. And then it has holes around the edges that I can set the brushes in later when they dry. It's kind of a nice thing. So let's get some water and start painting. So I've already placed all of my masking where I'd like it, and what I'll do is just begin with my large brush, and I'm going to go from the top down. And the reason is we're going to talk a little bit about perspective. So what I've done is I've lined my horizon here. My horizon line has to be perfectly straight across the page. So in the design of this picture, you're going to want to place your point of interest off center, either left or right side, and a little higher than the halfway mark, because you don't want something dead center in the middle. And then the next thing is to consider highlighting. Where's your light going to come from? So you'll make your sun or a little bit of light here where the sky will be brighter to cast the shadow on the lake for the bottom portion of the sail to shine down here in the water. It's reflective, so it's going to look exactly like the top, but just be a little bit more murky. Then the other thing to consider is where exactly these pieces of land are going to show up in your picture. Now, on my picture here that I've already painted, the land mass on this side is lower than the one over here. And the reason is this one is down lower, so you can tell that they're separate land masses. So they end, and there's this, valley between them where the ship can get out to the sea. And the other thing is, well, the farther down on the painting, the closer the images are to you. So they're going to be bigger and brighter colors than the ones that are farther back. Anything farther back in your distance is going to be a lot lighter in shade or value than the things in the front, because the things in the front have to pop, and that makes them look closer to you than things that are far away. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is decide where my sunshine is going to be, because that's going to cast the shadow in the background. I'll use a very bright yellow for my sun, and I'm going to just add a little bit of yellow in here. It doesn't have to be fancy. Looks like my brush is coming apart. And if you get brush strokes with a little bit of paint in it, you can rub them out later. This is watercolor, so they just brush away. So I'm making some sunshine. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be super thick paint. So you'll be scrubbing this hard paint. It's a cake paint, which is dry. And you'll be what they call worrying the paint. If you're worrying the paint, it means you're scrubbing it a lot to get the color up. So I'm just choosing to use some light blue for my sky. And it's going to be darker at the top than it is at the bottom. Let me scrub some paint onto my brush here. And as a painter, what you'll also try to do is add a bit of your own imagination to this picture. You don't have to paint everything through. Sometimes when it dries, it looks a little bit like you have some clouds in the sky. In between the blue and the yellow, the highlights, it will look like you have clouds. So you don't have to cover everything completely when you're painting. So I have a light blue and a yellow sky so far. And I'm going to paint the bottom as well. And I'm going to paint that a nice bright blue color too. I've never used this set of paints before, so they're not as bright or dark as I think, but it's always going to be darker at the back of the picture than it is at the front. And you'll notice I'm just brushing over the top of this masking because it won't hurt a thing. It's covering all the areas that I care don't get painted right now. You'll keep them nice and white so that when I remove them, I'll have a background that I can paint. And just sweep the color across the page. And then it gets lighter and lighter. So as I add more paint to the bottom, I just use up what's on my brush until I've covered the whole area. If you don't have enough paint, you can go back into your palette and get some more. But of course, you always, like I said, want it darker at the top and the bottom. So as we add water, it just blends down the paint that we already had at the top. We started with to begin with, and it's just covering the entire area here. There we go. And you can make it a little bit darker if you want to when you come back in here at the top. Just blend that in so that it looks a little lighter as it gets toward you at the bottom. And you can see I have a lot of hairs coming off this brush. Thank goodness I'm not going to be using it much more. And as soon as it dries, you know, you can use a hair dryer too. A lot of people just get that over with quickly and just blow dry this really fast and move right along. Mine, I didn't use a lot of water or color, so it will dry relatively quickly. And the next thing that you want to do is remove, obviously, one of the land masses that you're going to be painting. And you can see mine will come right up to the edge of the sail, like this. And I'm going to color it a brownish color. Then I can add some accents to that when I'm done. But you can see the white line that's left now that the masking is gone. And you'll just want to be very sure about your line and just color that straight across. So that the horizon line remains relatively straight at the bottom. You can even use a piece of tape if you need to. And then finish coloring this in. You can use different colors if you want. I'm just going easy with it. It doesn't matter. And again, you could use the larger brush. I've got a little sponge here, and you can fill it in much quicker than with the liner. Keeps things relatively square. And then at the top, you might just want to add a little bit of ripple near the edge so that you can see that it's a landmass. Maybe make it a little bit lumpy, because if you cut it just plain like a rectangle or triangle like I did, then it doesn't always look, you know, it doesn't look like a real picture. A real landmass usually has some highlights at the top, some trees that have grown in that area, maybe, you know, even a house far away. You know, a castle sits up there, who knows. When you're done painting that side, then you'll just remove the entire sail and the masking from the other side as well. So you can see that you have a nice white sail here that stands out from the rest of the sky. And the landmass is over here. You'll do the same thing, just paint this side about the same color if you want to, or a little darker, it doesn't matter. You can add again some land up here at the top, maybe some trees, so that it looks like it has trees up there. Make it a little bit lumpy. It looks realistic, and then just make sure the horizon line is pretty straight along with the other side that you painted to begin with. So there you have it. 2 land masses, the sail's been removed, and now we go to the boat. I like mine a bright red. So what I'm going to do is just peel back the masking. It reveals this beautiful little boat. You can see it right there. And I'm just going to take my liner brush. And the other thing about using inexpensive paints and paper to begin with is so that you can practice your hand, steadying your hand and getting used to, you know, like painting within your designated areas, making sure your lines are nice and straight. Like I paint upside down here for you today. So my lines aren't going to be exactly straight, but I'll do the best that I can. And just fill in that whole area there. It's a cute little red boat, a sailboat out here on your lake. You can always sure up your lines as well when you're finished to make sure that they look very straight. Okay, it's good enough for now. So the last reveal is going to be the bottom reflection of the sail in the water. And what we have here is we need to create a little bit of a shadow, because the line that goes straight up the center of the sail is going to be kind of a lightish gray. And so I'm going to use a soft black color. You can use more water with a black to lighten it up so that it's not super dark. And that way when you cast your shadow, it's pretty gray. So what I'm going to do is just make a line that goes straight down the center of the sail like this, and it can even ripple because it is water. And then I'm actually going to make it a little bit wider on this side because that's how it looks in the picture that I chose. It is from a photo. So you'll do the same thing on the top. The line comes straight up because it is kind of a shadow, and then a little bit wider off to the side, and fill that in. There we go, because it is a shadow. It doesn't have to be perfect up here, just to resemble the look of a shadow. And what happens is the eye, if it's, you know, enough believable, it will fill in the gaps for you based on things that it knows. So you don't have to worry about it being perfect. The next thing is just to put a little topper on it, one line here and one line connecting it to the boat, so that you have a little bit of a sail image. Now this one at the bottom is going to be, like I said, a little bit lighter because it is a reflection, but it should look about the same, the top to the bottom. So the other thing that we'll want to do along the bottom edge now is to create the wave here, showing that we have water. And what we'll do is we'll create a little darker ripple with some black and blue. It makes our water look like it's got some waves in it. And so we create those waves by adding a little bit darker water, like so, make it ripple a little bit, make it ripple right into the sides of this so that you can kind of see that the water goes over. There, we're creating some ripples here, just showing that we have water. And because you've kind of gone over this, you can add a little bit of water and just brush into it softly so that it looks like you've got some waves, you know, that you've created. You have some water here and people recognize that it's water. Kind of goes over the picture a little bit so that it looks, you can add a little bit more water to these lines to soften them up, just to make it look like they're ripples and not just lines that you put on with hard paint. And we're done, voila, masterpiece. Now if you do them in darker shades, I'm not using dark shades, it will look even more dramatic. So this is a really fun exercise, try it at home. Thanks for joining me today with Les Artistes.